Hello, I'm Bob Bradley. This is THE 101, Introduction to Theater and Drama Arts. And I am most happy today to welcome a former SMS student who has become quite notable in film and television, who has done a great deal of work that we who were here during the time that she was here are most proud of. And so I want you to meet Tess Harper, and we will talk about her work, and her career. So let's start with the question of what does acting mean to you?
Well, I think, you know, in a lot of ways, you begin as a child just loving to pretend to be other people. But, you know, it's that joy of trying to become another person. And then as you move through your education and you start looking at words and words written by very wonderful people, and you learn your technique through stage work, which is what I did at SMS, and eventually it comes to mean a mortgage payment, I'm afraid. But, you know, sometimes the thing about an actor, because he's an interpretive craftsman, your job is to take what has been written and to add your craft to that, and that becomes a whole project. And certainly you can only do with what's written. You can't make the proverbial silk purse out of a sow's ear, but it still ultimately is about good writing.
Okay, but you say, to that good writing you add your craft.
Right.
What do you call your craft, or how do you explain this to your nieces and nephews?
Well, it's very hard when you're young and people actually think you are the other person. You know, if it's your face and you're talking, that's somehow you and you're that character. But the craft is about embodying the character as written, hopefully, by the writer. And that is about just filling out, bringing a past history to the role, how they interrelate with other people. And sometimes it's just, I mean, it's cliche, but Spencer Tracy was right. You just look them in the eye and tell them the truth. And I think that's what acting is. I mean, you have to truly believe that moment, that you're in that moment. You have to be in that moment and to be open. I mean, there's certainly craftsmanship, like knowing how to technically get what you need to get onto the stage or onto a camera. But it's like doing research. You do that all before you get there. And when you get there, you look them in the eye and tell them the truth.
Okay, where do you start with your characterization? Kathleen Turner, whom both of us know, has said, and not always facetiously, that the first thing she wants to know is, what shoes is she wearing?
That's the Rosemary Harris School of Acting. Yeah. She starts with the shoes. Some people start with the wig, but I think it's...
Where do you start?
I start with history. I mean, I'm a historian by nature anyway, so the first thing I do is read the play, the script, several times, and I'm making little notes to myself in the background of that. And then by the time I want to know what happened the day before the audience is brought into this person's life. So I really tried to do it empathetically, really trying to inhabit the other person. And sometimes it is about, I mean, shoes are more than shoes. That's your foundation. Literally, how do you walk, and are you comfortable in, and can you move as that person? So I certainly understand her saying that. A lot of people start very, very deep under the skin and then start layering it out. But the good thing about a college education in the arts is that you learn techniques like Mr. Hodges breaking down the script and seeing the arc of the character and knowing where you want to go to, because what makes art and writing good is that the character you meet is not the same person at the end of the piece that you meet at the beginning of the piece. That something happens through their life, they grow, events or impact on them, so that there's actually subtle changes that go on in the character as the story progresses. And you really do have to create that character before the camera or the audience showed up.
Yes, and in fact, you as the actor cannot anticipate where you're going or where you will be at the end of the play. When the play begins, you have to begin at that moment,
That's
and
right.
you don't know anything.
Right. You can't telegraph it.
Right.
Yes, it has to unfold. It has to happen to you at that moment. But that's also, I think, about really knowing your craft, because you have to know what you're doing. It's not intuitive. I mean, I just, people, in a lot of ways, I have to react to what another actor's doing. I can't come into a play thinking this person's going to react this way and then I will react that way. Because if you're honest, you don't know how another person's truly going to react. You have to be there in the moment with them. And then your response has to be truly honest. But you have to say the words that the writer wrote. You can't make it up as you go along.
You mentioned early on that you like to do historical exploration. How do you do that exploration? Where do you go? What sources do you use at that point?
Certainly, if it's a known play and you know the playwright, but quite frankly, it's a lot about knowing the class that the social and economic class that character's coming from.
Okay, so do you literally go find books then?
Yes, I either go find a book or I try to understand the area, the location that the play is set in, and what impact that community might have had on people. For instance, when I did Christie, I decided that the character was my great-grandmother, so I laid my great-grandmother's past underneath that character so that I could be honest about what, every week being that character is rooted. In Tender Mercies, I just remembered Horton Foote writes so sparely. He's an American Chekhov. But at the very bottom of that character was I used a line from the Bible that says, "And Mary watched and kept these things in her heart." That's the only thing I wrote in the script, because that to me was what that character was. She was the watcher. Her job was to observe, to not superimpose her beliefs, or she was grace. She was grace. Mm-hmm. And things happened to her, but she didn't try to push characters one way or another. She let things happen to her and flow through her. And the audience watched the event through her eyes. So she had to be a fairly passive but strong person.
Talking about Tender Mercies, and maybe we'll just go to Tender Mercies at the moment. This, of course, was your first film.
Right.
One could have hardly wanted a better experience.
No.
Robert Duvall playing opposite you, and eventually won an Academy Award for Best Actor.
And Horton Foote
A script by Horton Foote and a director, Bruce Beresford. Mm-hmm. So, what did you, going into that film, when you had finished, what did you come out knowing or having learned, or?
I think with the film work, starting with Duvall was a joy, because he's Sandy Meisner trained, but at the same time he is probably the preeminent character actor in America. I mean, I just don't know anyone who can come close to what he does. He is a minimalist. And what I learned very, very early on, even in workshops before I got there, on a stage, an emotion comes to the character, and in order to get it to the back row, you have to physicalize the emotion in some way, through your voice, through your body, because on stage, and the audience tends to watch who is speaking, for one thing, and also on stage, it's not intimate. You have to move things out, but you still have to be honest in that moment. On film, you think it, and it comes through your eyes in some magical way. You don't necessarily overtly do anything. The emotion comes to you on a subliminal level, and that telegraphs into that kind of mysterious box that captures image. It's amazing, but it's really, I think, what a lot of people overdo. And you can't anticipate anything on film, because the film will catch your reaction shot, and you'll see the anticipation in the actor's eye. And what I learned is I was a much better reactive actor than I was a You know, my reaction shots, I think, are as good as anything where I actually say something, because I listen really well.
At what point or how long did it take you to discover this when you started working in front of the camera?
Very quickly.
Very quickly.
You know, it's amazing. I walked off that set the first day after that, the first day of filming, and I walked off that set and I went, I'm home. This is home to me. As a stage actress, I was always limited in that if you wanted to do repertory theater, which was the aim for everybody I knew when we were in undergraduate school, the few that are still out there, you need an older woman, the Thane of Caldor's wife, you know, and you need an ingenue. And a woman in repertory theater has to have a very versatile vocal equipment. She has to be very versatile physically. And I'm not. I have a very strange voice that is rather limited. But the medium of film really works well with me when I stay within the parameters of what I do really well.
Okay, you, again, with Tender Mercies. Tender Mercies is Texas, what, 1950s? Is
No,
it?
actually, it's set, when it was filmed in the early 80s.
Early 80s.
And she's a widow from the Vietnam War. She lost her
okay.
first husband,
So
so it's set
Texas
right.
70, 80.
Yeah, but it's also in that time warp where things seem older even though they're at the present.
So what did you do to give the sociological background for that character, for that woman who has a son by a previous marriage, and she's now married to
She marries
Robert Duvall,
who comes to her house as a drunk, a wandering drunk.
right? But you were very much a part of that landscape.
Absolutely.
So-
And the thing about that was a film, that script is about people alone in life, that we're kind of out there, an island to ourselves, and things pass through our lives and we react to them. And at the base of it, I remember the director and I sitting and talking about, she may not be madly in love with Max Sledge, but she's extremely lonely. You're in a landscape where you're so isolated. It's her and that boy alone in this vast horizon of nothing but that little motel sitting on. And she's alone in life. Her family's died. She's with her son. The one man she might have truly loved because she was a teenager and in love the way teenagers are, dies. And this is what happens to her, and she makes the most out of it. She truly is Mary. Mary watched and kept these things in her heart. That's what she is. And she was, to me, my father, who is extremely gentle, kind, and the concept of Christian grace, which is not explored very much when you usually do Southern or you think of Southerners as fundamentalist in some way, but the grace that you aren't judgmental, that you open your heart to people in its guarded way, and that it's not for you to judge, it's for a higher power to judge. And that's she was very open. This woman had the capacity to love, but she wasn't going to be out ringing bells about it. She was just going to live in her place on the earth and accept that as being that's where she belonged.
This film, which is to some extent very much a Texas film, that is, it's set in Texas, and as you have just said, you certainly are part of that. But you aren't from Texas, you're from Arkansas. You're from Arkansas. You went to school in Missouri.
Right.
And when you left here, you went to Texas. So why don't you how did you get from Springfield to Texas to the film?
Well, in my junior year in college, I married a man from Texas, and when we graduated, we moved to Texas, and I was in Houston, Texas. I did a lot of theater for free. I did a lot of what you might call community theater, run by, I'm sure Steppenwolf started this way, but then became what Steppenwolf is today. But I worked in 2 or 3 theaters where it was a group of people with college degrees in theater, and they could go, let's do a play, and we'd make the lights in the cans, and we'd rent some basement somewhere, and we would do, we did Godspell, and we did Twigs, and we did the Jules Pfeiffer White House Murders, and we did we did plays all the time, and I would get some kind of job that, let's see, I worked for a photo finishing place, not like a big lab. It was a big lab, and I worked as a cocktail waitress, and I worked as a secretary. I mean, I did whatever job I could, but really what I was doing was trying to pay rent on something that wasn't too cockroach infested so that I could go do theater at night. And then I did a year in something called the New Texas Theater Foundation, which was kind of like young audiences. It was 6 people in a van going all over Texas performing plays for children in schools. We had 15 plays that we would do, and it was pretty much no exit with 8 people that I had very little in common with, driving the roads of Texas for forever and not ever stopping for a bathroom stop, and getting a full $100 a week before taxes. And I was professional actress, and that was great training. And then at some point I thought either go back to graduate school or go to New York or go to LA, or maybe I'll just try Dallas, because there's actually a market in Dallas where people make a living as actors either through regional theaters or commercials or whatever shooting there. So I was in Dallas waiting tables and doing commercials and industrial films and whatever else I could get as an actor when I got Tender Mercies. Before I got Tender Mercies, though, I got turned down for a Chuck Norris film, and what I learned that weekend was, one, you cannot slit your wrists with a big disposable razor. It's not possible. But I went and I did a workshop on auditioning for film, and this woman was a casting director. And after it was over, she said, I don't know why you didn't get the Chuck Norris film. Maybe you look like his ex-wife. I mean, it's not because you can't do the work. And she said, I'm casting this film with this Australian director, Bruce Beresford, that Robert Duvall's going to do, and I want you to come in and read for me. And that's what happened with Tender Mercies. I also did dinner theater for a while, too, which is an experience in and of itself. It's just like what it is in that movie, Soapbox, the one with Kevin Kline and Sally Field. It starts out he's doing dinner. He's doing the death of a salesman in a dinner theater in Florida. It's pretty much like that.
That's really the truth there.
Yes, it's really the truth. People clinking on their glasses and the smell of fried food on the stage. I mean, it's good training.
Okay, the entire film was shot in Texas, wasn't it?
Yes, in Waxahachie, Texas.
None of it was done on
studio.
In Hollywood.
No, they had this wonderful set designer, Janine Oppenwald, who has done, she's been nominated for Oscars for different things, but she found this particular hill, this little prairie, and then they took a standing farmhouse and made the motel out of that. And it was shot not too far from where they shot parts of Bonnie and Clyde.
So, at that point, how did you get from Texas then to Hollywood?
Well, one of the producers of the film said, my nephew's an agent in Hollywood. Do you have anyone? And I go, well, I think I'll be able to get an agent now. And his nephew flew in and met me. And then within a week after the film wrapped, I packed my bags and went to Hollywood.
And you've been there ever since?
Pretty much so, yeah.
And do you have any idea how many films you have done since that time?
Geez, I have no idea. I know my career won't be like in the old days where people literally left one film and started another, but I would say there's probably maybe 30 projects. See, I've been at it 20 years. There's probably at least 30 different projects.
Yeah. And many of them with actors of quite respectable actors. We'll put it that way. When you start talking about, let's say you've done films with Jessica Lange, and of course Robert Duvall,
Sam Shepard and Sissy Spacek.
Of course, there's the one where Sidney Poitier jumps on top of you.
Yes, my favorite one. That was The Jackal. I told him that was the only reason I took that. That was the only big budget picture I'd ever been around. I was in Ishtar briefly, but it was, you just, those days on the Jackal, they were shooting with 8 cameramen and dozens of stuntmen, and I mean, it looked like the beach at Normandy. There was more equipment than was on the beach of Normandy on D-Day, and so I'd never seen anything that big. I've done a lot of small budget films, but yeah, I've been very lucky. I've worked with playwrights. I've worked with Horton Foote and Beth Henley and Sam Shepard. I've been very lucky in that regard. Sometimes I started out bigger and got progressively smaller, but you never know, you know, with the new kids coming up, what's going to hit. I do a lot of low budget stuff, and sometimes, like My New Gun, it gets a lot of attention, and sometimes it doesn't.
So from film, then we moved to television, and you have done lots of television.
A lot of movie of the weeks. And
movie of the weeks, and a lot of appearances on series. What do you do when you move into an ongoing series and you are just making an appearance for 1 week, and here's a cast that's already been working together and they have their dynamics set up? How do you adjust, or do you adjust? What do you do there?
well, obviously, television series is different than a movie even, because the TV series, the TV directors of the series move around. Sometimes with established shows, you have maybe 5 directors that rotate in and out doing episodes, but the real power on the set of a television series is usually the first AD, who has a schedule that everyone has to go with, and they've already set the look of the show. So the cinematographer is also very powerful, and then the lead of the show has more power than anyone else. So it's quite, for instance, if you're doing a sitcom, I did Grace Under Fire, was the only sitcom I ever did, but if your lines get laughs in the first table reading, you will find they've been reassigned to the star of the show. It's the second rehearsal. But I worked with this wonderful actress on Christie named Tyne Daly, who I think has won more Emmys than any other person in the history of Emmydom. And she said to me, with the character that's recurring, you are the keeper of that character's Bible. It's up to you to remember her past and her future. And if the writers come to you with something that doesn't mesh what you think, your job is to go to them and come to a compromise so that you're always truthful to your character. That's your job, because even the writers change from week to week. As a guest star, I'm always just so thrilled to work, and I feel so at home on a set that I don't recall ever being awkward. But see, I have the Tess Harper card that I play, which is I did Tender Mercies, which immediately I get some degree of respect. Yeah. I have worked on one show where the people were so dreadful that it was laughable, and they obviously had no work ethic, and they were being prima donnas, but you know, their career was over when that show was over. I mean, all you have to do to get real about television is if you go into the MGM lot or over to NBC and you walk down the hallway, you'll see the pictures of the cast of the big television shows of history, and you look and try to figure out which of those people in that cast had any career after that particular show was over. And the answer is not many. That TV eats you up and uses you and wears you out. And now that there's cable, in one character, you will appear so many times as that character that it's very hard to break the mold and go on and do something else.
And you mentioned the Tyne Daly story, and of course this is, she and you had done Christie together.
Yeah.
Christie is the only ongoing series that you appeared in.
That's
regularly.
Right. Yeah. Well, I did guest star spots as the lead's mother in Early Edition. I did about 5 of those with Bill Devane. Yeah. And that was always fun, because that was someone I knew when he was a student at the University of Georgia, student of Sylvia Hilliard's. I knew him when he was a kid, so that's always fun. I mean, I have a blast on a set. You know, when you're not the star, you don't have to worry about what kind of ratings it's getting. You know, all that's carried by someone else's. You know, I know when I went to work on a sitcom, I couldn't believe these people work like regular hours. And you go, you call this work? You come in, you read, you go away, you come back, you walk it on its feet, and then you do 2 days of 2 times you do it in front of an audience, and that's it? That you call that work? This is a great gig, you know? But if you're the head of it, you know, the people who are the writer, so many of them are stand-up comedians, and they are also in charge of the writing, and they work their butts off. But as just someone who comes in and says the lines and goes home, it's a great gig. It's a great gig.
With the Christie, which is the continuing series, now you said that Tyne Daly had said you needed to protect your character.
Right.
But how do you do this? What do you do? Or maybe you can't tell us what you've done.
Well, actually, you go early on. When you set with everyone, and whoever the first director is and the first producer. And Christie was based on a book, what I call a bodice ripper. And a lot of people have read it. A lot of people love it. And so that was sort of something you had to keep that sacrosanct. But my whole point in taking the character was that there were these hillbillies who this young girl, missionary girl from Asheville, North Carolina, goes to live in the hills with the hillbillies, and she just has so much wisdom, and all the hillbillies are so stupid, you know, that she rescues them from themselves. Well, her best friend, or the first hill woman she becomes friends with, is my character. Her name was Fairlight Spinster, who was kind of mystical, and I said, first of all, hillbillies may not be able to read and write, but stupid is not what they are. So I refused to be a dumb hillbilly just for the sake of having. One of the things was, someone said, Tess, what do you think about doing this barefoot? I said, I don't think about doing it barefoot at all. I have no plans of doing it barefoot. Can you say October in the Smoky Mountains? I don't think I'll be doing it barefoot. And then I brought in the research that said, you know, that is a concept of hillbillies running around barefoot. I mean, that is so cliche. I mean, if you stepped on a rusty nail and got blood poisoning, in 1910, you were dead. There was no antibiotics. There's reasons why you would protect things like your feet and your hands, you know. So grown people whose feet size did not change did not walk around barefoot. They didn't do it, and I'm not going to do it. What do you think about being dirty? I don't think of that. I said, you don't understand. This is a subculture. Even a subculture has different classes within it. And, you know, there would be the unwashed group, and there would be the people who wanted their kids to get education so they could have a better life. You can't just say the hill people and them all be the same. So they may have regretted that they hired me to do it, but I was there to protect my people. And so actually I brought them pictures, and I think I got better writing from the writers because I brought them ideas. So because I was like the B storyline. If I got like a good scene once a week, then I was happy.
You usually did.
Yes, I'd always managed to get one good scene.
The writers were very good to you on that. They always gave you one good scene every week.
Well, that's a character actor. If we get one good scene, we're happy. You know, you really connect with someone. They didn't write enough for Tyne and I together, because we wanted to play together. But you know, we were old, and the stories were about young children and this miraculous teenage girl who knew everything. So. And
this particular series, I think, unlike at least some, this one was actually done on location, wasn't it?
On location.
And so you picked up and you went where and for how long?
Townsend, Tennessee, at the beginning of the Smoky Mountains. It's on the other side of the mountain from Gatlinburg, and it really is at the opening of the Great Smoky National Forest. And we were 22 miles from the nearest grocery store. And you worked 14-hour days. So we all had rented houses, and it was really, it got desperate toward the end. I would much rather be one of those lucky people who live at home and drive to work, but I tend to be someone who lives out of a suitcase when I work. So how long were you? We were there, one year we were there for 6 months, and one year we were there for 7 months. And I mean, yeah, we were out in the boonies. Yeah. I mean, I remember having meetings with the cast and saying, if we don't find hobbies, we'll all go crazy. I mean, write the great mediocre American novel, take up painting, take up hiking, do something, because, I mean, the guest stars would come on and we would just jump on them and what's going on out there in the world. We felt really isolated.
Obviously, because it is 1910 or
yes.
whatever, but
It was-
why? Did they do any shooting on the lot or anything?
We had interior sets built on the set, and if you'll look at it now, most of it was shot exterior, because in 1910, people lived outside. Houses were where you went in to get away from the weather, but people lived outside much more than we do now. I mean, no electricity, no air conditioning, unless it was winter and you had to get warm, people lived outdoors. And and of course we had these beautiful Smoky Mountains all around us, and the film footage looks fabulous because it wasn't your typical, you know, backlot at Paramount.
Well, obviously you worked all day.
Not enough.
Well, not you.
No, but yes,
you,
we worked 12-hour days very easily on films. You worked 12, 14-hour days, easy, 5 days a week.
What did you do those 2 days that you were not shooting?
We got in a lot of trouble. We got in a lot of trouble. Tyne and I started collecting folk songs, and she can really sing, and so we did that. And in the summer months, we had visitors. I mean, I literally ran a bed and breakfast for friends one whole summer. And I read a lot. I just, you know, ordered a lot of stuff. I like the Smokies very much. It's very mystical. And the history of that place is very old and ancient. There's something it's not like the Ozarks. It's more primitive in some way. I mean, not people-wise. It's just the feel of the mountains around you and that mist. There's something very, very magical about the Smokies.
You mentioned earlier the story that Tyne Daly had told you, and obviously you learned how to protect a character from her. But with Tyne Daly and Duvall and Lang and Spacek, what have you learned, or did you learn? Did you watch them? What did you pick up from them, or how did you?
One of the most important things you can learn is that you need to learn what your method is. You have to take the classes, and while you're in the class, give yourself over to that method, and then after you leave it, pick out what works for you and what doesn't. But what's important is that no one else you work with will work exactly the way you do. You have to all meet there at the same time and allow the other person to do whatever it is they need to do to get to that place. So oddly enough, people don't talk about technique a lot with each other.
Oh, I don't think, yeah, right, yes.
You just do it.
Right.
Yeah, and you just do it, and you do it, and you know when you've made that connection, and it feels really good, it feels really positive, and you know, I mean, I've worked with actors who I call energy vampires, who literally you can't print anything they do for the first 5 prints, and you're in there giving everything you've got, and this other person's just getting warmed up on your time. But the good people are always there. You meet there and you do your thing, and it's so exciting when that happens. It's so exciting. You know when it happens. You're in that moment. We don't see all of those people with the lights and the microphones. You never are aware of those people at all. You're in the middle of it, and it's grand. It's just grand when it works.
But if it doesn't work, do you just pull whatever you can and go?
When it doesn't work, you can't save someone from themselves, and all you can do is to do the best you can, and you know, and then you see the finished product, and the director may have cut around the person who was not doing a very good job, or he may have pieced things together. That's the thing about the film business, is that it's not like you start at the beginning and you end at the end and then the audience applauds or they don't. I mean, this is something that's captured in 5 or 6 different setups, and then like a jigsaw puzzle, they put it together, and this magical thing happens at the end of it. You don't know when you're shooting what bits are going to be used. To me, it's always better to be as good as you can be for every bit. But other people, when those people that don't get there you can't help them. You just have to, it wears you out, you do the best you can, and then you have to let it go because you can't rescue someone.
This is one thing you might explain, because I'm sure that lots of people don't understand that with television shows or films, either one, you don't begin at the beginning and shoot it straight through. You, how is that arranged? How is it scheduled?
It's usually scheduled for how much it costs. It always is based on a budget. So generally, if there is a house in the movie, then the crew, all the scenes that take place in that house are shot in one lump thing. Even if you are only in the house at the beginning and the end of the picture, you shoot all of the stuff that happens in the house. And then you go outside, and if the weather's right, so it's based on location, and it's always based on money. It's based on when do we fly these people in to work on this section, and when do we get them out, and is there a certain amount of camera equipment? Do we need a crane? Do we need this? Do we have to black out the house for night shooting? Do we have to do this at night? And it's all lumped together as to how much it cost rather than how it plays out emotionally. I mean, that in a movie, the last thing that they're interested in is how it plays out emotionally.
How then do you retain your integrity? That is when you're just going a scene and a scene and a scene and there's no connection.
What you do is you use all that stuff you learned in college about breaking the script down and seeing where the arc of the character is. Oh, okay. Because then you can go back in your mind, you look at the scene for the day, and then you look at it in context with what comes before and after it. So you need to know the whole script when it starts. You don't have to know it by heart. But you need to know where you are within that story at any given time, so you aren't fouled up. You have to, that's why I think that what I learned in college helped me so much, in that I can break a script down. And when you see people try to do it by flying by the seat of their pants, they just make it so much harder on themselves than it needs to be. You know what the homework is. I mean, I remember talking to someone and saying, oh, someone said, I'm doing this scene class. It's so interesting. We're learning to break the script down. And I said, and how long have you been doing this? Oh, about 14 years. You just now realized you could break a script down? But because by the time you leave college, that's like breathing. That's what you do first. But people come at it from all directions. I mean, sometimes you get theater people whose work ethic is straight on, and sometimes you get kids who've been exploited from the time they were 5, and they don't really know what they're doing. They're just cute, and as long as they get what they want out of them, they don't have to teach them anything. You just have to adapt.
So what you will do then is, you know where your character begins, you know where your character ends, you know where your arc is, and so you simply, I'm sure it's not simple, you take the scene and you look at it in terms of where am I in my arc at this moment.
Well, you remember in Respect for Acting, one of the first things that Uta Hagen says is, where has this character been? She comes in the door carrying a load of groceries. Well, a bag. Well, what's in the bag? Where has she been? You know, you need to make those decisions before you walk on the stage with a bag in your hand. And that's what you do in context with the script, a filming script, is you have to do, where am I in this moment, not where was I before the play began. Where am I in this story?
Now, when you film sitcoms, and you said you had done Grace Under Fire, now those, they shoot straight through, don't they?
They do, but it's 20 minutes of work broken down into scenes, and they do what they call a 3-camera setup, which means 3 cameras are shooting all the time. And then they'll do, after they dismiss the audience, they'll do pickups if they need to come in close or not. But that's almost like doing a stage farce. It's like doing a 1-act play. And it's, you've got the whole week to rehearse. And you do, the comedies do shoot straight through, beginning to end.
You come in on a day and you start rehearsals?
Yes.
And as you said, you may find your lines reassigned,
yes,
but...
I remember someone sent me with, what was her name? Grace Under Fire? Brett will change the lines. And I said, okay. I mean, well, don't be thrown when she changes her line. I go, okay. That's okay. Because they come from stand-up. they're not used to working with other people. They chose to be stand-up comedians for a reason, and a group project is not one of those reasons. So it's hard for them to adapt to, you know, a whole cast. But yeah, you rehearse it like a little play, and then you shoot straight through.
Now, when you're doing the hour-long productions, they
all
schedule
over the place,
more
just
like a movie.
Like a movie.
And the movie for television is much the same way. Again,
Movie for television is like a movie, but it's shot really quickly. I mean, you shoot a whole movie for TV in 21 days now, or less. And mostly what you are is tired. I mean, you really, it's like doing tent theater and rep. You just push your way through the summer and then it's gone, you know.
And so in that, and what do you do, 14, 16-hour days?
Easily.
Yeah.
Easily.
And the night shots are usually done at night?
Yes. Yes.
So you're shooting all night?
They usually, that's another thing with scheduling. Say they'll do all your day stuff and then they lump all the night stuff. And usually they do it so it's on a Friday night, so you're working well into Saturdays. And then, of course, well, it's a weekend, we'll see you Monday morning. But yes, you shoot your night stuff usually at the end of the week. And that's hard. Night work is hard. I mean, it's like working in a factory at night. It's just not what, you know, it's worse than being in a play. I mean, you start out, my pickup call will be at 5 a.m. and by the end of the week, my pickup call will be at 1 p.m. because, you know, something they call the unions guarantee that you get so many hours of rest, and so the start time just gets later and later as they have to give you that much time to rest.
Let's change tracks, because recently you have done some changing of tracks, and that is you've become perhaps much more aware of the actor as a business person.
Yes.
Because you were on the was it the SAG negotiating team?
For our last theatrical contract and with the agents. What I realized, and because I'm older, I'm older. When you first start, you just want the job. You'll do it for free. You'll do it for anything. But eventually, you have to think about insurance and pension. It's a bore, but even an artist has to think about those things. And I think my education is a good liberal arts background. That's what I got here. And that is invaluable. And there's no way that you can say it's like going to technical school and therefore, you know, I'm a trained so-and-so and I could get X amount of hours. This helps me be a better person, to be more interested in the world, to participate in life, not just be a trained craftsperson. But what you need to make, people apply their art in different ways. And sometimes the way to really hate something is to take something you love and try to do it for a living. You can really end up hating what you used to love because it's, you know, it's work. And I just think it's imperative that if people are in a state university where it's the cheapest education you'll ever get in your life, that you need to know how to read a contract between two people. Because if you do art as a business, that's what you'll be doing in your work. You will make a contract between yourself and a producer, yourself and an agent, yourself and a writer, and you have to know how to read a contract. And the days when people said, "Don't worry, sweetheart, we'll take care of you," that's usually, you know, you're not going to be taken care of at all. And ultimately, you're responsible for your life, and you need to know these things. And if an actor's going into the business as a business, then the sooner he can realize that he is the owner of a factory that makes a product called, I'm an owner of a factory who makes a product called Tess Harper. I have to package her, I have to make sure the quality is good, I have to find distributors for the merchandise, I have to keep her books. You have to do all of those things. And as soon as you realize that art as a business is taking care of yourself, then I think in the long run you'll be better. It's very difficult for actors because actors will work for free. Just let me do the part, I really want to do the part. But at some point you have to start looking around you because too many people end up bankrupt, and that's not the way to go.
And as a business, well, not only as a business, you say look after yourself, you have to look after your physical well-being.
Yes, absolutely, your financial well-being.
And your mental well-being and your financial well-being.
There are, for instance, on a set, someone will say to you, that scene looks a little, you know, the scene where I jump from a moving car, it seems a little dangerous. And so many times an actor they go, well, we'll get you a stunt man if that's what you have to have. And you go, oh no, I can do it myself. And that's when people go to the hospital with broken legs and things like that, because the stuntman is really what's required by your union and by a bunch of different people who have your interest at heart. But if you feel like you're being somehow made less than who you are by saying, it's too dangerous for me to do, someone else needs to do it, I mean, you just have a little thing, something has to go off in your head. I mean, being maimed for life, playing make-believe, is not a reason to be maimed for life. And people do die in this business, you know. I remember once I was doing a rather dreadful film, but it was a scene where things were blowing around. It was dangerous. It was like a storm. And I came out with the actor to do the scene, and I looked at the camera crew, and they were behind plexiglass. They put up a wall of plexiglass between us and them. And you should know right away that something dangerous may be happening.
You began to question whether you should.
Yes, I know. If you have this, what does that mean that it's going to happen to me if you're using plexiglass? You know, I just think dying doing make-believe is never a good idea. Best not to die. Best to, you know, end up in the old actor's home or something.
Okay, you have mentioned several times, and I mentioned SAG, Screen Actors Guild. You've talked about unions. How do you get into the unions? Because I'm sure many people don't understand this at all. And why should you get into the unions?
Well, I think, you know, if you're living in a right-to-work state, for instance, if you're going to start your acting career, as I did in Texas, which is a right-to-work state, the South has very little use for unions and finds ways to get around them as much as possible. There is a time when you're doing things non-union just to get the experience. I did an industrial film for IBM. The qualifications was I needed to be able to type 60 words a minute and look fairly good on camera. So I got the job. It was a great gig. It was like maybe $5,000, but it was non-union. The product was only going to be seen in the corporate offices of IBM, and that gave me experience working with the crew, working with lights and all that other stuff. But when I started working on national things, it was time to join. When you decide you're going to be a full-time professional, it's a good time to join a union. And I know that's always the first question. I remember when people used to come here when we were in college, how do you get your union card? How do you find an agent? Those are the two hard things.
So, okay, answer them.
Actually, you can do it at least two ways. One is you get cast in a speaking part in a union project. And the first time out, they will do something called a Taft-Hartley, which is an exemption for your first job. But then you take that exemption and you go to the union office and you join the union. Or if you come in doing background work, you get 3 vouchers for having done the work. So the main thing to work on is getting the job. The people will let you know when it's time to get the card.
Do you recommend, are you saying then that perhaps there are times when you shouldn't get the card?
Well, depending on where you're working, but certainly it's like saying, you can't say to yourself, today I am a professional plumber and I'm available to take care of pipes wherever they are, when you've never seen a U-joint and you don't know what the pieces of plumbing are. I mean, when you declare yourself to be a professional plumber, you should already know how to be a plumber. You see what I'm saying? So there are ways that you have to learn, and one way to learn is to do non-union student films. A lot of people now that digital is easy to use, student films are being made left and right in college campuses all over America. Work on a student film. When something comes to town, audition for it, find out what's going on, and then apply for work wherever you can find it. And when the part is big enough, you'll know, okay, now I join the union. And if you're lucky enough to start on your first job being on a big project, you can join the union. It's easier to join than you would think.
All right, now, the other thing was, how do you get your agent? Now, you said when you had done Tender Mercies that a producer said, I have a
nephew who just happens to be, and that's usually how people get agents too. In New York, you do off-Broadway, you do little plays and people come and see you work. In Los Angeles, there's also that forum, and there are also there are also different calls that you can go to. But generally they say, do you have film on yourself? When you're looking for an agent, they go, great, what have you done? Well, I'm just starting out. Well, when you've done something, call me and we'll talk. So the best thing to do is, if you're coming out of Springfield or Dallas or wherever, is to get the work out of those cities so that you can have something on your resume when you go in and you can show people, you know, get a little radio spot, try to get a spot on local television, do a student film, because that, as soon as you have something to show, they'll be interested in talking to you.
Okay, you have an agent who works for you now?
Yes.
Okay. How do you get a job? How do you get a job today, being Tess Harper and who you are?
They still come from a bunch of different places. One will be a writer I know will call and say, listen, I'm doing this low-budget picture. Are you available? Would you like to do it? Other times they call the agent, or the agent sees something in something called the breakdowns, which is all things being cast are in this thing called the breakdowns that the agents only get over the internet. So they can look at every project coming up, and they submit your picture and try to get you an audition. But it's still about, a lot of times, about who you know, who you've had a relationship with, and it's not just who you've acted with before. It's about the writer, the director, someone in the cast. I mean, you're always gathering information. And so that's what they call networking. And that's usually the way you find out what the jobs are. You have to be out there looking.
Do you always work through your agent, or do you?
Yes, even if someone calls me and say, Tess, we're doing this low budget thing, I go, listen, I'll be glad to do it, call my agent, and then they'll know. I mean, obviously, I don't want to tell somebody I'll do something for them for free when something that pays a lot of money I might have to walk away from. So first we have to look at the schedules, and then we'll book it together. So that way, you know, it's like selling a house. Some people would prefer to sell a house through a realtor. I would rather work that way than try to do it myself. I would. It just, you know, they do the legwork, and then your job is to go in and do the audition. But you know, I've been in the business 20 years. They pretty much know what the product is, and if it fits into what they're doing. It's like I'm not an unknown quantity anymore.
Do you have anything currently that you're working on?
I'm going to go do a little film in July called Jesus, Mary, and Joey. And it's a little project. It's a like under $5 million little film, and still trying to do, you know, I'm close to retirement.
Come on, wait a minute. No.
I'm in that land as an actress in the early 50s, where you're too old to be the mother and you're not old enough to be driving Miss Daisy. So I'm kind of in that gap, and I think things will come back. But I'm also, you know, I'm doing writing. I'm going to writing class. I just try to live an interesting life, and the work is not what it was a few years ago. The business has changed radically, but also, you know, there's the shelf life is not what it was. I don't really mind it too much. You know, I'm not hungry for it anymore.
One thing I know that sometimes The Jackal, is that the film?
Yeah.
How many times does that show on cable?
Well, this is one of the things a good union does for you. The union tracks your residuals. Okay. I did that film, and I don't think the upfront money was so much. It was nice, but I only worked on it for like a week. I've made my salary twice overs on the video sales. My residuals have now paid me twice what the original salary was on that film from the video sales, and that's what the good video market, and that's a base rate set by your union in negotiations. Right. So when you see these, like, I mean, Frances Fisher's on the board of SAG with me, and she lived for over a year off of the Titanic, you know, videos. I mean, you know, that's just another way that the product gets a second life.
So every time that film is shown, or in fact, if I remember correctly, when there is a video copy sold of the film, you get something from it?
Yeah, there's what's the percentage? 6% of the sales is divided. 6% of the profits of the sales is divided amongst the whole cast. So if it's smaller, percentage is a little bigger, and it's all based on numbers of days and salary units. But quite literally, the big stars, when it comes to the residuals, get the same. You know, they're on the same. What they do, they max out, so more people hit the max out level. But yes, you get. I mean, I got a check for Ishtar the other day. That was shot like in what, 85 or something. You know, it was never a big hit. I mean, at one day I got a $12 check. You know.
Well, at least we know from now on when we see you there on the screen, hey, Tess is making something.
A nickel today.
Hey, today she's getting paid for this.
Well, you know, that's the amazing thing about film is that it now with the cable industry and with the different technology, it lives on forever.
Well, I would like to say thank you very much. We have gone and gone and gone.
We knew that was a possibility.
That's right. And I've had a great time doing it, and so I appreciate it a lot. And I am certainly glad that you came and did this with us. And so we want to say that we have been most grateful for Tess Harper being here and for being able to do this interview with her. She graduated from SMS in the 1970s. We won't say exactly when.
Early.
In the 1970s, and then...
Say Nixon was still the president.
And you've heard about much of her career since then, and it has certainly been a very good one, and work that she can be exceedingly proud of, and one that we most certainly are proud of